Good morning. How are you? Good morning. Today I'm going to be discussing Genesis 22. Genesis 22. So, Genesis 22 is actually talking about how God tested Abraham's faith, tested his faith. God asked Abraham to sacrifice his only son, which is Isaac, and Abraham did not argue. He did not argue. In the morning, he set up his donkey and he took his son to go and sacrifice. He took his son to, was going to sacrifice in an altar. He got there, built an altar, built a place where he's going to sacrifice his son. Arranged the wood, took lots of wood and then arranged it and was preparing to sacrifice his son when God called his name, Abraham, and asked him to stop. I told him to turn his back, that there was a ram behind him to sacrifice that. But what I learned there is Abraham did not focus. He did not just focus on the blessing, because Abraham didn't have a child until old age. He didn't have a child until old age. Then after having that child, God still told him to go and sacrifice it. And he did not argue. So because sometimes we focus on the blessing than God. We focus on the blessing instead of focusing on God. Sometimes we focus on that blessing, and when the blessing, all we just need is the blessing. And when the blessing comes, we are gone again. When we need another blessing, we come back to God. And then when that blessing comes, we go again. You understand? So I learned, say, Abraham didn't focus on the blessing. He knew that that was his only son. And he did not start shouting, "Oh God, why? Why me? Why me? You gave me this son at old age. Why do you still want to take him away from me?" No, he just obeyed. He just obeyed. He just obeyed because he knew who God was. He knew what he can do. You understand? He knew what he can do. I'm sure he knows that God won't tell me, God won't take it away from me, but let me obey him first. So sometimes we focus on the blessing too much. And when we get it, the moment we get it, we don't pray again, we don't read the Bible, we don't go to church. Then when we need another thing again, go back to God, because we want to take the blessing and go back. So what you need to learn in Genesis 22, you need to go and read it. Is faith and obedience. Faith and obedience. Abraham unwavering faith in God's command and his obedience, even in the face of difficult requests. So this is demonstrating a profound lesson in trust and submission, even in that difficult situation. Even that difficult situation where God said, "Go and sacrifice my son," Abraham still went there. Obedience, 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 and faith. I also learned God's provision. God provides. God provides. These verse highlight that God provides a ram for the sacrifice, emphasizing his faithfulness and provision in times of trial. So in all the tests, God provided. He said, "No, Abraham, you have passed the test. Abraham, surely you truly love me. Abraham, stop. There's a ram behind you. Use that as a sacrifice." Even when he stopped Abraham, he provided what Abraham should use. So I also learned testing and trusting. The chapter is that Genesis 22 is illustrating the concept of testing one's faith and trust in God. Abraham willingness. Most of us don't have willingness to serve God. Most of us don't have willingness to give. Most of us don't have willingness to serve in his kingdom. Except we are being pushed. Come to Bible study, come to church, come to meeting. We are being pushed. We don't have the will. Abraham's willingness to follow through with God's command reveals the depth of his trust. Abraham trusts God so much. So he was willing to do it anyways, because he has seen God do things. He has seen God moves. So Why will he not trust him when he comes to him? He has seen him, he knows what he can do. So he was willing to give God all, you know. So I also learned understanding God's ways. Abraham understood God's ways. He know how he does his things, you know. It teaches Genesis 22. It teaches that humans may not understand God's ways, but trusting in his wisdom and sovereignty is crucial. We may not understand why there is a delay. We may not understand his ways, but just trust in his faithfulness. Just trust in his promises. Just trust in him. We may not understand. You may be wondering, but why? Just trust him. He knows why. He knows why he's keeping it. You know, he knows why he's keeping that blessing. It will come. He said, though it delays, it will surely come to pass. You know. So also I learned promises fulfilled. Promises fulfilled. You know. God, his promise to Abraham, you know, God promised to bless Abraham and make his descendants numerous, you know, reinforcing the idea that God remains faithful in his promises. Remember in the beginning of Genesis, God told Abraham, I will make your descendants numerous. You know, he told Abraham, I will make your descendants numerous. So Abraham still remembered the promise. He still remembered that promise. That is why he was able to say, let me go and sacrifice my son. Because God said he will make my descendants numerous, which means my children, that will have children's children. And there will be plenty, you know. So if God made that promise to me, why will I not go do what he said I should do? So Abraham still kept that word, and God still kept that word, you know. If you read through the Bible, how God was, you know, blessing Abraham's descendants from Isaac to Jacob to Esau, you know, you understand? So God was blessing Abraham's descendants, you understand? So I also learned worship and altar building. Abraham act of worship and building an altar after the event underscores the importance of acknowledging God's supremacy and expressing gratitude. After that encounter, before Abraham left where he was supposed to sacrifice his son, rather he sacrificed a ram. Abraham built an altar there to worship God. He built an altar. You understand? So that is what we should do as Christians. All right? Building an altar for God. Even in your house, you can build an altar for God to worship him there. You can create a space, that place where you have put your clothes that you haven't worn for 6 months. You can move the clothes and make an altar for God. So Abraham built an altar for there. He never stopped worshiping. He never stopped. So I just wanted to, you know, explain Genesis 22. If you have the time today, read it. So you understand the importance of trusting God no matter the situation. So thank you very much for listening. God bless you. Bye.